What's going on, guys? This is going to be a video that is going to talk about the PlayStation 1 Classic or the PS Mini failure. Excuse me. Now, I haven't made a video talking about the failing PS1 Classic system in a while because basically I beat that shit to death. I mean, I wasn't hoping for it to fail. I just didn't have a good feeling about it when it was announced. Mainly when it was announced a week after a Nintendo Direct where Squaresoft or Square Enix came out and basically tore PlayStation a new asshole by saying, fuck you, Final Fantasy 7, 9, 10, 10, 2, and 12 will be played on Nintendo Switch, turning into a huge wreck of PlayStation exclusives that made a couple generations stand out. I mean, think about it. Final Fantasy VII defined what an RPG for the PlayStation 1 could be. Final Fantasy X defined and is probably the biggest Final Fantasy from PS2. Okay? Final Fantasy X-2, you can take or leave. Final Fantasy 12, you can take or leave. But Final Fantasy 7 and Final Fantasy X are two of the biggest Final Fantasy games to ever come out. And while Final Fantasy 9 is perfectly fine, it's always highly debated upon whether 7, 8, or 9 is the greatest one of all time. So the fact that 8 is not part of this scenario really just goes to show you that Square believes Final Fantasy 9 is better than 8. Personally, 8 is my favorite between 8 and 9. I prefer 8. That's just me. That is my opinion. Don't sit there in the comments talking about, fuck you, 9 is better. No, shut up, bitch. I just like 8. To me, and the reason I like 8 is the exact same reason a lot of people like 8, is because Squall is who I was in high school. Antisocial. I ran with a very small crowd. And I kept to myself a lot, okay? So I just related to his character a whole lot, man. So when Square Enix came out, I want to say Squaresoft because I love Final Fantasy VII so much, and it still says Squaresoft on those. So when Square Enix came out and they said Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy IX, Final Fantasy X, Final Fantasy X-2, and Final Fantasy XII, all games that help in some way either shape one generation or the other on PlayStation, is coming to Switch. That was a huge blow, okay? Then the PlayStation Mini gets announced, and not only does it get announced, but it gets announced with like a mediocre at best game library the first day. Final Fantasy VII was on that list after being announced at a Nintendo Direct, taking the wind out of the sails almost immediately, because Final Fantasy VII became the game that you didn't talk about the PlayStation 1 Classic just because it was coming to the Nintendo Switch. Okay? I'm taking nothing away from what that game meant to the PlayStation library, but they should have put 8 on there because 8 was the one not coming to Nintendo. But this article is basically asking, is the fact that the PlayStation Classic failing, does that prove that PlayStation has no real good games? No. PlayStation just took the cheapest route. PlayStation opted for the cheapest, easiest cash grab they could think of, which is why Final Fantasy VII's on there, which is why Metal Gear Solid is on there, which is why Resident Evil is on there, and it's also why games like Cool Borders is on there. It's also why they opted out to make it a PAL version for even released in the States. Okay? This was just a huge mistake by Sony. This has nothing to do with Sony's history or whether or not they have great classic games. I'll never debate that because they do. I was a huge fan of Cool Borders. Still am. I think I still have Cool Borders 2. I might. I don't know. I don't know what I have in my PS1 library because it's not very big. It's actually kind of small and I don't play my PlayStation 1 that much. But my point is this. Just because the PlayStation 1 Classic failed doesn't mean that there's no good games. I mean, Legend of Dragoon is a great game by Squaresoft. Final Fantasy 7, 8, 9, Metal Gear, Silent Hill, Resident Evil 1, Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 3, Resident Evil Survivor, which depending on who you are, you can leave or take, Duke Nukem. There are so many great games on the PlayStation 1 that, in all honesty, if anything, I would skip over the PS1 Mini still and just spend the little bit of money it's going to cost to buy you a physical PlayStation 1 to play on. They're everywhere, and most stores are looking to get rid of them because they know they can't charge much for them. For instance, my PlayStation 1 I paid $15 for came with 2 controllers and a memory card. And then I bought another one for $30 at Goodwill that came with 2 Crash Bandicoot games, 2 controllers, and 2 memory cards. So you can get them relatively cheap with or without games. Now, whether you want Black Label or Green Label is completely up to you and does change the cost of said game. However, PlayStation games do not hold value, so don't be expecting to spend too much on physical games. There are the random rare games like Tales of Destiny, which is up there in price. But majority of PlayStation games run on the relatively cheap side. Like I said, there's only a handful of games out there that cost a hell of a lot of money. And they're so far and few between that it really wouldn't fucking matter. Alright? So, I just wanted to put this out there because, like I said, I saw this article asking if the PS1 Classic failures just proves that Sony has no good games. No. The failure of the PlayStation Classic is 100% Sony's fault. They cheaped out on every aspect of that motherfucker, and they know it. So, this is coming from a guy who bashed the shit out of the console from the moment it was announced, to the moment it launched, to the moment it had its first price drop, to its last. So, take it from me.